Good morning, all. Welcome to the course Introduction to Cybersecurity. So, in this chapter, you'll be learning about endpoint security, mobile device protection, and the password policies that are effectively used in the cybersecurity domain to prevent any kind of attacks or unauthorized access on the data or the devices. So, I am Amarnath, Assistant Professor, Department of Digital and Cyber Forensic Science, Nehru Arts and Science College. Let's get started. So, by the end of this chapter, you may be able to define what a endpoint is and its role in protecting the network connected devices. You may also be able to identify the common threats on an endpoint device and the mobile device. You will be knowing why a password policy is important in the cybersecurity and what are the security measures that a cyber expert can be deploying to protected devices and the best practices that a man or a user can use for protecting or securing their endpoint device or mobile devices from any kind of cyber threat. So the next is, what do you mean by a endpoint or a mobile device protection? So before discussing about endpoint security, we must understand the term what a endpoint is. So a endpoint is any device that connects to a computer network and exchanges information with other devices or system. So whenever a device sends or receives information through a network, it becomes a endpoint. So some of the most commonly used devices such as desktop, computer, laptop, smartphones, ATM systems, printers, and the Internet of Things or the IoT devices such as CCTV camera, smartwatches, even the smart home appliances are some of the examples of these endpoint devices. So the endpoint and mobile device protection, it is a combination of technologies, security policies, software solution, and best practices that are designed to protect the endpoint devices against any kind of cyber threat. So even if one endpoint is compromised, so the attacker will be using this specific endpoint to gain the access inside to the system of the organization. So the ultimate goal of this endpoint is to maintain the CAA triad, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability triad. So the next is endpoint security. So what do you mean by endpoint securities? It is the practice of protecting a endpoint device from any kind of cyber threats while ensuring that they can safely connect to a organizational network. So in the earlier days, the organizations mainly focused on protecting just the network. So in the modern day, the employees have started working from home. They can access the cloud services and even connect through the public Wi-Fi. And the employees mostly will be using their personal laptops and the smartphones to perform any kind of official work. So as a result, the network perimeter has expanded beyond the physical office. So what the cyber criminal or the attacker will be doing is the attacker will be attacking the endpoint devices rather than targeting the organization's firewall. So the main objective of this endpoint security may include preventing malware infection, detecting suspicious activities, protecting confidential information, controlling user access, and it will be ensuring that the compromised devices are isolated before they are affecting the other system. The components of endpoint security. So let's understand what are the major components that will be working together to provide security to the endpoint devices. The first component is antivirus and anti-malware software. These applications such as antivirus and anti-malware, will be continuously scanning the files, applications, and the process to detect any kind of malicious software inside a device before it can damage the system. So the modern antivirus softwares will not only identify the known malware, but it will be also using the behavior analysis method to detect previously unknown threats. The second component is endpoint detection and response, that is commonly called as EDR. Unlike the traditional antivirus software, this EDR will continuously monitor the endpoint activities in the real time. So it will be recording the system events, identify if any kind of suspicious activities are detected. It will be investigating a cyber attack and automatically respond when a malicious activity is detected. The next component is a firewall. So this firewall acts as a security barrier between the device and the external network. It will be continuously monitoring the incoming and outgoing network traffic and block the unauthorized communication based on a set of predefined security rules. The another two major components of a endpoint security is patch management and multi-factor authentication. So the software developers will be regularly releasing security updates to fix if any kind of vulnerabilities are there in the applications. If these updates are ignored, then the attackers can exploit the known vulnerabilities to compromise the system. So coming to the multi-factor authentications, instead of relying only on the password, this multi-factor authentication requires the user to provide an additional verification factor such as fingerprint, facial recognition, one-time password that is sent to their mobile phone. Even if the attacker steals the user password, they cannot easily access the account without the second authentication factor. So this multi-factor authentication plays a vital role in protecting the sensitive informations. The common threats to the endpoint devices. We all know that technology is advancing day by day. With the help of this technology, the cyber threats are also becoming more sophisticated. Attackers are no longer targeting only the large organizations. They are also targeting individuals, educational institutions, hospital, bank, and government agencies. Since endpoint devices are directly used by peoples, they are often the easiest target. So the first threat to the endpoint device is a malware. So a malware is a malicious software. So it is intentionally designed to harm a computer system, steal information, spy on user, and to disrupt the normal operations. The next is virus. A virus is a type of malware that is attaching itself to a legitimate file or a program. When the infected file is opened, the virus activates and spread to the other files or system. This virus can corrupt the files, reduce the system performance, or sometimes this may completely damage the operating system. The next threat is worm. Unlike the virus, worm does not require any interaction or any kind of communication to spread. They automatically replicate themselves through the network by exploiting any kind of software vulnerabilities. As they spread very early or very rapidly, these worms can infect thousands of devices within a very short span of time. And the most dangerous cyber threat as of today is ransomware and spyware. So, a ransomware encrypts a victim's file and displays a message demanding the payment. Usually, the payment is done in cryptocurrency to restore their access, whereas a spyware is secretly used to monitor the user activity without their knowledge. It can even record the browsing history, capture the screenshots, monitor the keyboard inputs, and can even steal the login credentials and the banking information. And the most common attack the cyberspace faces in the modern scenario is phishing. So, a phishing is a social engineering attack where the cybercriminal sends a fake email, message, or a URL of a website that appears to be a original one. The main target or the goal of this phishing is to trick the users into revealing username, password, banking details, or downloading any kind of malicious software. The most sophisticated attack of the modern day is zero-day exploit. So in this zero-day exploit, a zero-day vulnerability is sent to the user's device through a software vendor. Since no security patch exists, the attacker will be using this vulnerability to exploit and get inside the system. These attacks are extremely difficult to detect and prevent as the security team does not have a proper time to fix the devices or the vulnerability gaps. So the impact of these attacks on endpoint devices. What will be the after effect of these attacks on any kind of endpoint devices? So as we all know, the impact can be severe. The organization may experience data theft, financial loss, disruption of service, identity theft, legal issues, loss of consumer trust, and even complete the business shutdown in extreme cases. So, therefore, understanding these threats is the first step towards implementing a effective endpoint security. Best practices that can be done to keep a endpoint device secure. As we all know, cybersecurity is not achieved through a single software or an application. Instead, it will require a combination of technology, organizational policies, and a responsible user behavior. The first thing is keeping the operating systems and the software updated. So the software developers will be often releasing the security updates that will be fixing the newly discovered security vulnerabilities. So delaying these updates provide the attacker with an opportunity to explain the known vulnerabilities. Installing trusted antivirus and anti-malware software. So the reliable security software will be continuously scanning if any kind of vulnerabilities are there in the files or the device. They will be continuously monitoring the system activities and it will be detecting the malicious program before they can cause damage. Enabling firewall and data encryption. So as we all know, a firewall will be acting as a protective barrier by monitoring both the incoming and outgoing network traffic. It will be blocking the unauthorized network connections and it will be allowing only the genuine communication to pass to the device. Whereas encryption, it will be protecting the sensitive information by converting it into unreadable format or ciphertext. Even if a laptop is stolen or lost, encrypted data cannot be easily accessed by the unauthorized individual. The most important thing to keep the data secure are regular backups and strong authentication mechanism. So the backup will be ensuring that the important information can be restored in the event of hardware failure, accidental deletion, or ransomware attack. It will be keeping a data securely so that if any kind of incident happen, then the user can take the backup data. So the passwords, a strong authentication mechanism. As we all know, the password should be complex, unique, and combined with a multi-factor authentication if possible. So the organization must also implement the principle of least privilege, where the user receive only the minimum permission to perform the required task. One of the most important security measure is user awareness and cybersecurity training. Many cyber attacks succeed because of not only because of the technical weakness, but because users unknowingly clicking malicious link or downloading any kind of infected attachments or disclosing a confidential information. Always remember, technology can reduce the cyber risk, but the informed users are often strongest defense against the cyber threat. Mobile phone security. As we all know, for the last few decades, the smartphones have been evolved far beyond simple communication device. So these mobile phones are functioning as a portable computers that have a capability of performing n number of actions. So in the modern scenario, the smartphones are used by people for internet browsing, email communication, online banking, digital payment, social networking, online shopping, and other activities. So, what do you mean by the term mobile security or a mobile phone security? So, a mobile phone security refers to the protection of smartphones and tablets from cyber threats, unauthorized access, malware infection, and the data theft. In the modern day, the organizations follow the bring your own device concept, where the employees use their personal smartphones to access the office emails and business application. Therefore, organization implementing the mobile security policies to ensure that the sensitive business information remain protected even when the employees are working remotely. Mobile security threat and protection. Just like the computers, smartphones are also facing numerous cybersecurity threats. One of the common threat is malicious mobile phone application. So the cyber criminals will be creating a fake application that appears to be a original, but they may secretly steal the personal information, monitor user activities, or install a malware in the background. The next major threat is smishing, or also called as SMS phishing. In this, the user will be receiving a fake text message claiming that to be from bank, courier companies, or from any kind of government agencies. These messages may often contain the fake links that are designed to steal login credential or the financial information. Public or fake Wi-Fi networks. The attackers will be creating a fake Wi-Fi hotspot that may be appearing like a original one. When the user connects these networks, the attacker may intercept the sensitive information such as username, password, or the banking details. Bluetooth attacks and swapping. If a Bluetooth is remained enabled continuously, the attacker may exploit the vulnerabilities that are found in the Bluetooth to gain any kind of unauthorized access to the device or transfer malicious file. In the swapping, the cyber criminals convince the mobile service providers to issue a duplicate SIM card. Once they have got a duplicate SIM cards, they receive OTP verification message that are only intended for a legitimate user, allowing them to compromise the bank accounts and the online services. Protective measures that can be used for a mobile device security. So to protect a mobile device, the user can follow certain important security practices. They may include downloading application from a trusted app stores such as Google Play Store and Apple Play Store, enabling strong screen locks such as PIN, password, fingerprint, or facial recognition, keeping the operating system and the applications updated with the latest security patch, enabling the device encryption to protect the informations that are stored inside the device, regular backup of important data to a secure cloud storage. Even the user can enable Find My Device or Find My iPhone feature so that the lost data can be located, logged, and erased if necessary. At last, the user should carefully review the application permission before installing any kind of application into the device. This may help the user to find what are the data are being shared with the owner of the specific application. Password policy. So before discussing about the password policies, let's understand what is the importance of a password. So a password is one of the most common methods that is used to verify the identity of a user before granting access to a system, application, or a online services. For example, if you are logging into your email, online bank account, social media platform, or on your college portal, the first level of protection will be always a username and a password. So the passwords can also become one of the weak points in the cybersecurity if they are created very poorly and managed. Many of the users still create passwords such as 123456 password admin, or they may use their own name, date of birth, or mobile number as their passwords. These passwords will be becoming a easier target for the attackers to guess the password using many kind of automated tools. So a password policy is a set of rules and regulations that guides the user in creating, maintaining and managing a secure password. So it will be helping the user to ensure that the password is difficult to guess, resistant to attack, properly managed throughout the life cycle. Strong password policy. So let's look into the characteristics of a strong password. The password should have a minimum length, that is, at least of 12 to 16 characters should be present as the length of the password. The password should be containing a complexity so that the attacker cannot use any kind of automated tools to perform any kind of attack onto the passwords and breach the system. So the password should contain both the uppercase and the lowercase letter with the inclusion of numbers and special characters. Password expiration or changing of passwords after a certain period of time is mandatory. Always make sure that the same passwords are not repeated in the different platforms. Account lockout after repeated failure login attempts should be implemented so that there will be low chances of unauthorized access. Best practices. So, what are the best practices that can be done to protect a password from any kind of attacks? The first one is never reuse the passwords across multiple accounts or multiple platforms. The attacker will be using a technique called as credential stuffing, where he'll be using the same password across all the platforms to gain unauthorized access towards the data, enabling multi-factor authentication. So this multi-factor authentication will be adding a extra layer of security by requiring a second form of verification such as OTP, fingerprint, or authentication applications, making it much harder for the attackers to gain unauthorized access. Use a password manager. The password manager securely stores your password and helps you to generate a strong, unique password for every account. So the passwords will be automatically storing over the password manager. So you don't have to remember them. Change the compromised passwords immediately. If you suspect that your password has been exposed or your password has been compromised in a data breach or a phishing attack, replace it with a new, stronger, and unique password without any delay. Never share your passwords with anyone, including your friends or colleagues. Passwords are the personal credentials and should always remain confidential. So let's summarize what are the things we have learned in this chapter. So we have learned about endpoint and mobile device protection, which focuses on securing devices connected to the network against any kind of cybercrime. So we have learned what is an endpoint and what are the security measures that we have taken to protect the endpoint from any kind of cyber attacks. And we have discussed about the mobile phone security. What are the common threats that is facing to the mobile phone security, and what are the countermeasures we can implement to protect a mobile device from any kind of cyber attack. And we have also studied about the password policy and its importance in protecting the integrated or critical or sensitive information.